The entire crowd froze when the Bugatti suddenly went silent. Not because the engine stopped. Because 5 of the most expensive technology companies in the country had already spent weeks trying to fix it and failed. The luxury hypercar sat motionless in the center of a sunlit corporate plaza, surrounded by engineers, technicians, executives, cameras, and reporters. Millions of dollars had been spent on diagnostics, software analysis, and consultations. Yet nobody could figure out why the vehicle refused to run. Then a tired single dad wearing oil-stained work clothes stepped forward. 5 minutes later, the impossible happened. Before we begin, if you believe kindness, hard work, and second chances deserve recognition, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire for more emotional and uplifting stories. The bright morning sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Phoenix as employees gathered outside the headquarters of one of the world's fastest-growing technology corporations. At the center of the attention stood Arlen Voss, a billionaire CEO known for building revolutionary software systems and acquiring struggling companies before transforming them into giants. Arlen owned many luxury vehicles, but none meant more to him than his custom Bugatti. The car wasn't important because of its price. It was important because it had belonged to his late father. Years earlier, before becoming a billionaire, Arlen's father had spent decades saving every dollar he could. Purchasing the Bugatti had been the achievement of a lifetime. It represented sacrifice, determination, and dreams fulfilled. After his father passed away unexpectedly, the car became Arlen's most treasured possession. Then one day it simply stopped working. No warning. No accident. No explanation. One moment it was perfect. The next moment it became a very expensive sculpture. Arlen hired the best specialists available. One technology company analyzed every onboard computer. Another imported engineers from overseas. A third company rebuilt major electronic systems. A fourth developed custom diagnostic software. A fifth used artificial intelligence to search for hidden faults. Weeks passed. Then months. Millions of dollars disappeared. Nothing worked. The failure became an embarrassment. News channels covered the mystery. Social media users mocked the experts. People began calling it the unfixable Bugatti. Across the city, 42-year-old Merrick Hale knew nothing about any of this. His world looked very different. Merrick lived in a modest neighborhood with his 10-year-old daughter Rowan. Life had become difficult after the death of his wife 6 years earlier. Since then, Merrick had carried every responsibility alone. He worked long hours repairing vehicles at a small independent garage. Every morning before sunrise, he prepared breakfast for Rowan, packed her lunch, braided her hair as best he could, and drove her to school before heading to work. Money was always tight. Some months he had to choose between replacing worn work boots or repairing something around the house. Yet despite everything, Rowan never complained. She understood how hard her father worked. She often sat in the garage after school, doing homework while Merrick repaired engines. Customers trusted him because he possessed something many mechanics lacked. He listened. Not just to people. To machines. Years of experience had trained him to notice tiny details others overlooked. A strange vibration. A subtle clicking sound. A barely noticeable hesitation. Merrick believed every machine told a story. You just had to pay attention. One afternoon, Rowan showed him an online article about the famous Bugatti. The headline claimed nobody in the country could repair it. Merrick smiled and returned to work. But Rowan noticed something. Her father kept looking at the article. A few days later, she surprised him. She submitted his name through an online public challenge the company had created. Anyone who believed they could identify the problem was allowed one attempt. When Merrick discovered what she had done, he nearly fell out of his chair. At first he laughed. Then he became nervous. Then he became terrified. The invitation arrived the following week. Arlen's office wanted him to inspect the vehicle. Merrick considered declining. What could he possibly accomplish that hundreds of experts couldn't? But Rowan refused to let him quit. She reminded him of something he always told her. Sometimes the biggest opportunities arrive disguised as impossible problems. The morning of the inspection arrived bright and clear. The corporate plaza buzzed with activity. News crews prepared cameras. Executives exchanged skeptical glances. Engineers folded their arms. Many couldn't believe a small-town mechanic had been invited. When Merrick stepped out of his aging pickup truck, people immediately judged him. His clothes were simple. His truck looked older than many employees. He carried a worn toolbox that had belonged to his grandfather. To most observers, he didn't look important. But Rowan walked beside him proudly. That mattered more than anything. Arlen greeted them personally. Though exhausted from months of frustration, he remained respectful. The CEO simply wanted answers. Any answers? Merrick approached the Bugatti slowly. He didn't start with a computer. He didn't request advanced equipment. Instead, he walked around the vehicle several times. He crouched beside it. He listened. He touched various components. He studied details others ignored. The crowd became restless. Some people rolled their eyes. Others whispered sarcastic comments. One engineer laughed openly. But Merrick remained focused. He asked for permission to start the vehicle. The engine attempted to respond but immediately failed. Again. And again. Most people heard failure. Merrick heard something else. A tiny inconsistency. Almost invisible. Almost inaudible. He requested a flashlight. After examining one specific area beneath the rear section, he smiled. The expression surprised Rowan. It was the same smile he wore whenever he solved a difficult problem at the garage. Merrick opened his toolbox. He removed a simple hand tool. The crowd looked confused. This couldn't possibly be serious. For several moments he worked quietly. No dramatic speeches. No expensive technology. No complicated software. Just patience and experience. Then he stood up. Exactly 5 minutes after beginning. He nodded toward Arlen. The CEO climbed inside. Silence spread across the plaza. The key turned. A heartbeat passed. Then another. Suddenly the Bugatti roared to life. The sound exploded across the plaza like thunder. People gasped. Several engineers stared in disbelief. One reporter dropped a microphone. Others simply stood frozen. The impossible had happened. Months of failure had ended in minutes. Arlen stepped out of the vehicle looking stunned. He asked what had been wrong. Merrick explained that a tiny connector hidden deep within a protected section had developed a minor issue. The problem was so small that most advanced diagnostic systems overlooked it because they focused on major electronic failures. Everyone had been searching for a complex answer. The solution had been remarkably simple. But finding it required experience rather than technology. For a moment nobody spoke. Then applause erupted across the plaza. What happened next surprised Merrick even more. Arlen didn't celebrate the repair first. Instead, he asked about Rowan. He had noticed how proudly she watched her father. After learning their story, the billionaire became emotional. He saw reflections of his own childhood. His father had worked endless hours to create opportunities. Merrick had done exactly the same. That afternoon Arlen invited them to lunch. For the first time in years, Merrick spoke openly about the challenges of raising a child alone. He described the loneliness. The sacrifices. The constant worry. The fear of not being enough. Arlen listened carefully. By the end of the conversation, he made a life-changing decision. Several weeks later, Merrick received an offer. Not as a corporate executive. Not as a celebrity mechanic. But as the leader of a new innovation workshop dedicated to practical engineering solutions. The program focused on experience, creativity, and real-world problem-solving. Skills often overlooked in a world obsessed with expensive technology. The salary transformed their lives. Rowan gained educational opportunities she had never imagined. Their financial struggles slowly disappeared. Yet the most meaningful change wasn't money. It was recognition. For years Merrick had worked quietly while the world ignored people like him. Now his knowledge mattered. His voice mattered. His journey mattered. Months later, the workshop became enormously successful. Companies from around the country sought advice from Merrick and his team. Young mechanics learned that wisdom could be just as valuable as advanced degrees. Experienced workers regained confidence in their abilities. And every morning before work, Merrick still drove Rowan to school. Some things never changed. One sunny afternoon, Arlen visited the workshop. He watched Merrick teaching apprentices and smiled. The billionaire realized something important. The Bugatti had never been the real problem. The real issue was that everyone had forgotten to value ordinary people. They trusted technology more than experience. Status more than character. Appearances more than substance. Merrick had reminded them of a truth that couldn't be programmed into any computer. Sometimes the greatest expertise comes from those nobody notices. And sometimes the person who changes everything arrives in an old pickup truck carrying a worn toolbox. Before we reach the ending, if this story has touched your heart, please like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes hard work still matters. Your support helps more inspiring stories reach people around the world. Special request: comment below with the words, "True worth has no price," if you believe a person's value should never be judged by their appearance, job title, or bank account. Years after the famous Bugatti repair, people still talked about the day 5 tech giants failed and a single dad succeeded. But Rowan remembered something different. She remembered watching her father stand confidently in front of people who underestimated him. She remembered seeing him prove that kindness, humility, and perseverance still mattered. Most importantly, she remembered learning that heroes don't always wear suits, own companies, or appear on television. Sometimes they wake up before sunrise, work until their hands ache, sacrifice everything for their children, and keep moving forward even when nobody notices. And in the brightest daylight, when the world finally sees them, they remind everyone that true greatness has never been measured by wealth. It has always been measured by heart.